In 2015, a friend traded me a vintage Ouija board for an old video game I never played. I thought it might be worth something, so I took it. One night, alone in my apartment, I tried it out, but the planchette didn't budge. Disappointed, I tossed it on the living room floor and forgot about it. The next morning, I woke to find my two potted plants, usually on the coffee table, knocked over, dirt strewn across the carpet. The Ouija board sat neatly on the table, its surface gleaming in the morning light. I hadn't moved it, and there were no pets or open windows to blame. I wondered if I'd sleepwalked, though I'd never done that before. I cleaned up the mess, the dirt leaving stubborn stains on the carpet, and moved the board to my bedroom, tossing it on the floor. That night, as I lay in bed, a faint click broke the silence. Through the cracks of my closet door, I saw a light. The closet bulb was on. I checked inside. It was empty. I turned off the light and climbed back into bed, my nerves on edge. 10 minutes later, another click. The closet light was on again. My heart sank, a mix of confusion and dread building inside me. I shut it off, got back in bed, and waited, expecting the click to return. Instead, the entire room blazed with light as the main switch flipped on, illuminating every corner. That was enough. I grabbed the Ouija board, sprinted to the nearest dumpster, and hurled it in, the box clattering against the metal. Nothing strange has happened since, but I'll never touch a Ouija board again. The thought of that light flicking on by itself still haunts me, a reminder of something I can't explain. One night, I had some friends over, and we decided to mess around with a Ouija board we'd found discarded in a neighbor's trash pile. It was battered but intact, complete with a glass planchette. The four of us gathered around, holding the piece and tossing out ridiculous questions, laughing as we tried to spook each other. Someone was always nudging the planchette to spell out nonsense, keeping the mood light. When two friends bailed, one to the bathroom, another bored, it was just me and my friend, Liam. Half joking, I asked, "When will I die?" The glass piece slid to T. I glared at Liam, assuming he was messing with me. "I'm not doing it," he said, his voice serious. The piece kept moving. O-M-O-R-R-O-W. It spelled tomorrow. Liam pulled his hands away, and the piece stopped. "That was you, right?" I asked, my throat dry. "No, man. I thought it was you," he swore. I laughed it off as a prank, but the next day was a nightmare. While walking my dog through a nearby forest trail, his collar snapped, and he sprinted toward a busy road. I chased after him, a truck's horn blaring as it sped closer. I dove out of the way, my leg grazing the tire, the impact bruising my shin. Later that day, I was sitting in my kitchen under a ceiling fan set to high. I stood to grab a soda from the fridge when a deafening crash shook the room. The fan had fallen, shattering the glass table where I'd been sitting moments before. Shards littered the floor, and the heavy fan lay where my head had been. If I hadn't moved, I could have been killed. 2 brushes with death in one day, right after the Ouija board's warning? Coincidence or not, I'm done with Ouija boards for good. As far back as my memory stretches, an old, weathered Milton Bradley Ouija board sat abandoned in a dusty corner of our attic, its faded box tucked among forgotten toys and holiday decorations. As a young kid, I thought it was just another boring board game, its cryptic design unappealing. That changed when I stumbled across an article online explaining what a Ouija board really was, a tool to contact the other side. My curiosity ignited, and I couldn't resist digging it out from the clutter. I pleaded with my older brother, Nathan, to try it with me, and after some reluctance, he caved. We sat at the kitchen table, the board between us, our fingers resting lightly on the planchette. I started with the classic questions. Is anyone out there? Can you hear us? Nathan, always the prankster, nudged the planchette to spell out gibberish, mimicking a spirit's response. Nothing genuine happened, and we quickly grew bored, shoving the board back into its box. That night, I dove into online forums, reading about how to make a Ouija board work. Many posts insisted the best setting was a dark room lit only by candles, creating an eerie, focused atmosphere. When our parents were out one evening, I gathered 9 candles, arranged them in a circle around the dining room table, and turned off every light in the house. The flickering flames cast long, wavering shadows on the walls. Nathan joined me, skeptical but curious. I asked again, "Is anybody here?" The planchette twitched, then slid. "Quit moving it." I snapped at Nathan. "I'm not. I swear," he replied, his eyes wide. He lifted his hands, and to my horror, the planchette kept gliding, landing on yes. I was only 10, and my heart pounded like a drum. Nathan took over, his voice shaky as he asked, "Are you a good spirit?" After a tense, 5-second pause, the planchette slid to NO. Our gazes locked, fear mirrored in our eyes. I bolted to my room, slamming the door shut, but Nathan, stubborn as ever, kept going. Moments later, a piercing scream echoed from downstairs. I raced back to find him clutching his chest, lifting his shirt to reveal a fresh, claw-like wound. 3 jagged red lines oozing blood. "Start the fireplace now," he shouted, his voice trembling with panic. I obeyed, scrambling to light the logs as he threw the Ouija board into the flames, the wood crackling and popping as it burned. "Never speak of this to anyone," he warned, his face pale. "We've never touched a Ouija board since, and the memory of that night still sends shivers down my spine." It was a humid night in August 2024, and I was 15, obsessively browsing Craigslist for hockey gear. I was broke, so I needed the cheapest deal possible, condition be damned. I stumbled across an ad that seemed too good to be true. Goalie pads, a blocker, a glove, and a stick, all in decent shape, for just $60. The photos looked legit, so I texted the seller. He asked a few questions, including my age. When I said, "I'm 15, he replied, "That's awesome, kid. It's great to see someone so dedicated so young." At the time, I didn't think much of it, but looking back, it should have raised a red flag. I asked for his address, but he dodged the question. "Where you at, kid? I can meet you somewhere close." That felt odd, but I was desperate for the gear. We settled on meeting in the parking lot of a strip mall a few blocks from my house in Pine Hollow, Washington. I waited in the empty lot, the summer heat still lingering even after dark. Then I heard a horn blare. A beat-up white van sat parked far from the other cars, its tinted windows giving nothing away. My phone pinged with a text. "I'm in the white van. Come over." I texted back, "Can you bring the gear out?" But he replied, "Easier to do the deal inside the van." My gut screamed to run. I bolted down the street, glancing back to see the van creeping along behind me. Now there was someone in the passenger seat, too, a shadow I hadn't noticed before. Not wanting to lead them to my house, I cut through a neighbor's yard, hopped a fence, and crouched behind a hedge on the other side of the block. Within seconds, the van rolled by, slow and deliberate, before turning a corner and disappearing. I sprinted home, heart racing, and told my parents everything. They were furious. The Craigslist ad was gone by the time we checked, and I hadn't gotten the license plate or seen the driver's face. All we could report was a suspicious white van. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I heard an engine idling outside. Peeking through my window, I saw the same white van parked across the street. The moment I looked out, it sped off, tires squealing. I haven't seen it since, but I still wonder if they knew where I lived or if it was just a coincidence. The thought keeps me up at night. I've kept this story mostly to myself, too strange to share without sounding unhinged. Our family had a closet packed with old board games, including a Ouija board I'd always been curious about. I wanted to try it, but with my parents and brother always around, it felt too weird. One weekend, when my parents were out of town and my brother was at a scout retreat, I had the house to myself. Instead of throwing a party, I was oddly fixated on testing the Ouija board. It was a stormy night, with rain lashing the windows and wind rattling the house, setting a perfect, eerie stage. Around midnight, I set up the board on the dining room table, lit a single candle, and turned off all the lights, the flame casting flickering shadows across the walls. I asked question after question, my fingers trembling on the planchette, but nothing happened. Disappointed, I packed it away and went to bed, the storm still raging outside. In the dead of night, A creaking noise near the front door jolted me awake. I dismissed it as the house settling, but then it came again, closer, near the staircase. My pulse quickened. Another creak, this time on the stairs themselves. Someone, or something, was in the house. Cell phones weren't common then, so calling for help wasn't an option. The creaking grew louder, stopping right outside my bedroom door. Silence followed, stretching into what felt like an eternity. A lightning strike lit up my room, and for a fleeting moment, I swore I saw a dark, claw-like shape curled around the doorframe, its edges jagged and unnatural. I held my breath, frozen in fear. Then, my door slammed shut with a force that shook the walls. I screamed, diving under my covers, trembling and sobbing, convinced something was in the room with me. The house had no open windows, so it wasn't a draft. I stayed hidden until dawn, too terrified to move. When I finally crept out, the house looked normal. No broken windows, no unlocked doors. But there, on the dining room table, was the Ouija board. Out of its box, the planchette centered perfectly. I hadn't left it there. Convinced it was the source, I threw it in the outdoor trash bin, dragging it to the curb for pickup. Nothing strange has happened since, but I've never told anyone. You wouldn't believe it unless you'd lived through it. My cousin, Ethan, once shared a bone-chilling story about a night he, his dad, his brother, and his friend Caleb used a Ouija board in their basement. Before they began, they removed a creepy porcelain doll from the room. It had wide, unblinking eyes that seemed to follow you. They placed it face down on a stack of old blankets in the next room, hoping to shake off its unsettling presence. Ethan took a break to use the bathroom, frustrated by the board's nonsensical answers. While he was gone, the others asked, "Who's in the other room?" The planchette moved, spelling out a string of random numbers. When Ethan returned, his brother showed him the answer. "That's my social security number," Ethan whispered, his face draining of color. They pressed on, asking the entity to reveal more. It spelled out that Ethan would die in the Marines, a prediction that hit hard since he'd been considering enlisting. Growing uneasy, they demanded proof. "Show us you're real," they said. The planchette slid slowly, spelling DOLL. A cold dread settled over them. They opened the door to check on the doll, expecting to see it face down as they'd left it. Instead, it stood upright, its glassy eyes staring directly at them, as if it had moved on its own. Panic erupted. They fled the house, hearts racing, and Caleb burned the Ouija board later that night, the flames consuming it as they watched in silence. Caleb wasn't himself for months, haunted by the experience. Strangely, Ethan joined the Marines and is stationed far away now, but he refuses to discuss that night, as if speaking it aloud might summon something back. In early 2025, I decided to sell an old dining room set on Craigslist. I listed it for $1,500, noting it was somewhat negotiable. It was a beautiful oak set, but living in rural Blackwood, Montana, meant not many buyers were around. After weeks of no bites, I got a call from a man with a shaky, raspy voice that set me on edge. "I'm interested in the dining set. Can I come see it?" he asked. I gave him my address, and he said he'd be there in 30 minutes. I polished the table and chairs one last time to make them shine. The doorbell rang just 15 minutes later, way too fast for my remote area. When I opened the door, my stomach dropped. The man looked like he'd crawled out of a dumpster, a stained tank top, ripped cargo pants, a greasy beard, and wild, unkempt hair. Everything about him screamed trouble. "Hey there," he said in that same shaky voice, his eyes darting around. I let him in, against my better judgment, since the dining room was right by the front door. He shuffled in slowly, running his hands over every inch of the furniture, muttering strange noises under his breath. It was unsettling, to say the least. Trying to break the tension, I brought up the price. "So, I'm asking $1,500 for the set." He froze, looked up, and flashed a smile that made my skin crawl. "How about $600? I chuckled, thinking it was a joke, but his smile twisted into a scowl. "That's my offer." I politely declined, saying, "I'm sorry, that's too low. I could go down to $1,300, but that's my lowest." That's when things got weird. He clutched his head, pacing back and forth, muttering louder and making guttural sounds. Then he stopped and glared at me with pure venom in his eyes. I knew then this guy wasn't right. "Thanks for coming, but I think we're done here," I said, trying to sound calm. He didn't budge, just kept staring with that hateful look. Then his hand slipped toward his back pocket, and my heart stopped. I thought he was reaching for a weapon. I bolted upstairs to my bedroom, grabbed my loaded .38 from the closet, and took cover behind the wall, peeking toward the dining room. He was gone. I locked my bedroom door and called 911, crouching behind my bed, expecting him to be lurking somewhere in the house. It felt like an eternity before I heard sirens. The police entered, and I came out with my hands up, showing my ID. They searched the house while I waited outside, my nerves shot. After what felt like forever, they emerged with the man in cuffs. They'd found him hiding in my kitchen pantry, clutching a loaded pistol. The worst part? As they drove him away, he stared at me through the police car window with that same hateful glare, like he was already planning his revenge. I'm still considering moving. The paranoia of him coming back haunts me every day. All I can say is, be careful who you give your address to on Craigslist. Back in the summer of 2023, a chilling story circulated among my cousins and close friends in the small town of Willow Creek, Oregon. My cousin's girlfriend at the time, Sarah, was hunting for her first apartment. She was ready to leave her parents' home in the suburbs and strike out on her own. Since she and my cousin, Ethan, had only been together for a few months, they weren't ready to shack up together. Instead, Sarah turned to the internet, scouring sites like Craigslist for a roommate. One had caught her eye, titled something like "Female Roommate Wanted, No Guys Allowed." This wasn't unusual for the area, a quiet town filled with young professionals and college students. The listing offered a room in a 2-story house for just $250 a month, an absolute steal compared to other rentals in the area. The poster described herself as a 24-year-old grad student who wasn't comfortable living with men. The room came with its own private bathroom, which sealed the deal for Sarah. The only downside? The ad had just one blurry photo of the house's exterior. Sarah fired off an email to arrange a meeting and tour the place. Within 20 minutes, she got a reply with an address and a time, 9 p.m., since the poster, supposedly named Emily, worked late shifts. When Sarah pulled up to the house that evening, she found a handwritten note taped to the front door jammed. Use back entrance. The house itself looked decent from the outside, though the lawn was overgrown with weeds and the windows were coated in grime. Nothing too alarming, Sarah thought, as she made her way to the back. She knocked, and to her surprise, a middle-aged man opened the door. Confused, Sarah hesitated, thinking she'd gotten the wrong address. "No, you're in the right place," the man said with a crooked smile. "Emily's out working late. I'm the landlord, Tom. She asked me to show you around." Sarah's instincts prickled, but she brushed it off. The man seemed friendly enough, though his disheveled appearance, unshaven, wearing a stained jacket, and looking like he hadn't showered in days, didn't exactly scream professional landlord. As they stepped inside, Sarah noticed the house was dimly lit, with only the flickering kitchen bulb casting shadows. The tour began, but something felt off. The house was completely empty, no furniture, no decorations, just bare walls and creaky floors. Tom answered her questions politely, but grew visibly agitated when Sarah lingered too long in any room, urging her to move faster and flipping off lights almost immediately. One room, he claimed, was Emily's. "Can't go in there," he said sharply. "It's her private space." "I respect that." As they moved through a narrow hallway toward the living room, Sarah spotted something that sent a chill down her spine. The front door was boarded shut with a thick plank of wood, as if someone didn't want it opened. Her unease was now screaming, but she tried to stay polite, thanking Tom and saying she'd seen enough. "Oh, wait," he said, his tone suddenly too eager. "I forgot to show you the basement. It's newly renovated, perfect for a rec room. You've got to check it out." They were standing in a cramped hallway between the living room and kitchen, where a heavy basement door sat. Tom opened it, the door swinging outward, partially blocking the path to the back exit. The basement below was a void of darkness. He gestured toward the stairs with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Ladies first. Just then, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text. At the same moment, headlights flashed outside as a car pulled up. Thinking fast, Sarah pretended it was a call. "Hey, you're here? Awesome. I'll come out the back to let you in. You're gonna love this place." She flashed a confident smile, excused herself, and slipped past Tom, bolting out the back door. She caught a glimpse of his stunned expression as she fled. Once outside, she sprinted to her car and peeled out of the neighborhood, heart pounding. When Sarah got home, she spilled everything to her mom and Ethan. The police were called, and they took her statement. By the time they checked, the Craigslist ad had vanished. The house? It had been foreclosed on for over 8 months and was supposed to be abandoned. When the police searched the property, they found the landlord had been squatting in the locked room he wouldn't let Sarah see. Inside was a pile of filthy blankets, moldy food scraps, and empty water jugs. The walls were plastered with torn pages from adult magazines. But the basement was worse. A thin fishing line was strung across the stairs at shin height, a clear trip hazard. The basement itself was empty except for a pile of rags, a wooden pole wrapped in duct tape, and a small box containing rolls of electrical tape and zip ties. Sarah still shudders thinking about what might have happened if she'd gone down those stairs.